Hello, 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 and welcome to C3 Arts Radio. This is your loyal host, Philip Harvey, coming live and direct to you from City College, New York. Of course, the college on the hill. And we are the broadcast arm of the City College Center for the Arts. And I want to welcome you to another installment of C3 Arts Radio, your place for arts advocacy and your source for all of the news that is happening in the cultural arts world, both locally, nationally, and internationally. Yes, C3 Arts Radio. And I'm joined here today with my co-host, Mr. Nasser Metcalf.
Hey, hey, hey.
Hey, Nasser. So good you could join us today. Nasser is now officially part of the C3 Arts Radio family. He joins yours truly and Tony Ty Starrett, a.k.a. The Tiger, as the crew that's going to be bringing you all of this important, sensational, scintillating
Indeed. Thanks for having me, man. I'm honored to be here and be a part of it.
information. Yes, of course, Nasser. We're very happy to have you with us, Nasser. And Nasser is also, he's pulling double duty for us today because he's also going to be the subject today of our What's the Word segment. Of course, that is our storytelling segment. And if you were with us just a few weeks ago, we had Linda Humes of Yafa Arts Incorporated was here, and she told a fantastic story. And you know, at the base of What's the Word storyteller segment is all of the different very kind of varied styles people bring to the art of storytelling. So Nas is going to weigh in himself. He is another master storyteller, I must say.
Man, no pressure, no pressure.
And today we also have for you the bulletin. Of course, that is our segment where we introduce you to some of our suggestions for what's going on in the world of arts and culture. Today we're going to be concentrating right here, good old New York City. So we're going to get into that in a little bit. But first, Nasser, and speaking of events and cultural events and arts events,
Right.
you recently went to one of what I would say was one of the hot tickets in the city not too long ago. Of course, that is the anniversary of Eric B. and Rakim.
Right.
Yeah, at the
Right.
Apollo, no
At the
less.
Apollo,
At
yeah,
the Apollo,
absolutely.
no less. Yeah. How was that? I mean, you know, I
Oh,
know it
man.
was fantastic, but how was it?
Oh, brother, man, let me tell you, it was one of the most culturally enriching experiences of my life, you know, being a longtime hip-hop fan, especially, you know, of what we consider classic hip-hop. You know, some people call it old school, whatever you want to call it. I just consider it classic hip-hop, you know, that continues the tradition of which the art form was founded upon. And that album, Paid in Full, when it was released on July 7th, 1987.
Right.
And they had the 30th anniversary concert at the Apollo Theater on July 7th, 2017. So it was literally 30 years to the day that
30
the
years
album
to
was
the day,
released.
huh?
Yeah, man,
God,
that they
30
had
years?
this event. And
that album came out 30 years. Oh my
I know. It makes you feel old, right? Like, oh, man. But, you know, I remember when it came out and how pivotal it was for me because I was born and raised in Chicago, as you know.
Yes,
And during that era, you know, hip-hop was still very young, and it hadn't quite made its way to Chicago in a major way.
House music was king.
House music was what ruled the
Yeah,
streets.
house music was king.
And I'm still, you know, a big house head and, you know,
course.
love house music and soul and all that stuff that I grew up on. Still very much a part of, you know, my musical taste. But, you know, hip hop was just starting to kind of, you know, start to make its mark in my area. And Eric B. and Rakim's album, well, first we had, like, I think the first one I mean, you know, we saw Run DMCs and that stuff come along because that stuff was national. But then, like, you know, after that, like Public Enemies, Yo Bum Rush the Show album had come out.
It was that second. That was part of the second kind of coming.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, we had heard, of course, like from the beginning, like Rapper's Delight and
Or third coming, I would say.
yeah.
You know who my favorite rapper was before Run DMC, of course they just came in and kind of just changed the game, was Busy B. Busy B was my boy.
Yeah.
And this cat named Waterbed Kev.
Oh yeah.
Remember
Of course,
Waterbed Kev?
of course, man, of course. Oh, you taking it way back, man.
yeah. This is
Yeah,
before
man.
Run DMC.
Yeah, no,
We're talking about
definitely. And yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it was this rich tradition of this cultural movement that we know as hip hop, you know, and with recent shows like the Get Down on Netflix or the Breaks on VH1, you know, we've kind of been revisiting like
we're kind of going back to that particular time.
Yeah, we're revisiting how what the genesis period was for this art form, and you know, and these various cultural and artistic offerings, you know, in the landscape here. So so this concert, you know, to get back to that, was just incredible, man. To witness all of these artists come and pay homage. I'm expecting to see pretty much Eric B. and Rakim, maybe a guest or two, you know what I mean, here and there, but mainly like that's going to be their show. It wound up being like Eric B. and Rakim kind of presents. I mean, they really only did like maybe 4 or 5 numbers, maybe 2 in the beginning and then like 2 or 3 at the end. But the rest of the show was just this incredible parade of legendary hip hop acts that you just didn't know who was gonna come out next. Like I mean, I was like preparing myself, like, okay, like Jay-Z could come out any minute now, Nas could come out any minute now. Like
they could have, especially Nas,
who's
in the kind of the sphere of Rakim.
Oh, Rakim is a huge influence on him. I mean, on his album, on Nas's album, Streets Disciple, he has a whole song dedicated to telling Rakim's biography. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, he definitely, you know, recognizes that homage and acknowledges that influence. But you know, it was incredible because it's like it starts off, you know, with the guys coming out and Eric B, you know, and you didn't see Rakim for a while, but Eric B just started introducing you, like starting off with like Joeski Love, doing Pee Wee Herman and all these like old school stuff, and then Mace came out and performed a little something. So then finally, you know, Rakim comes out and they do My Melody, and they do
and that was my song, My Melody. And that's the one that really got me open first. The first time I heard that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And it was incredible how they brought him out because they had a couple of guest DJs who were there, kind of doing, you know, helping pull the duty, and they were spinning that what's that song with 50 Cent and Game? It was 50 has a line who said my favorite DJ, my favorite rapper said check out My Melody. He has a line in there. So they kept like they played that song. And they started looping that part, and it just kept saying, my rapper said, check out My Melody. My favorite rapper said, check out My Melody. And then next thing you know, like Rakim walks on stage, and it was like, oh, because it was great because, you know, 50 being of his generation and acknowledging his influence by Rakim, you know, so then for Ra to take the stage, you know, in the midst of that was just really momentous. The crowd went crazy. You know?
Yeah, I can imagine.
One of my favorite moments, and you know, we're talking about guests, for, you know, so many people, APMD, Lost Boys, Main Source. I mean, Rich Boy, even like, you know, this.
Rich Boy was there.
Rich Boy came out, yeah, man. They bought it. You know, they covered all the generations, man. But one of my favorite moments was with I Ain't No Joke. They performed I Ain't No Joke, right? Did the whole song. It was dope. Rakim comes back and says, Eric B, you know, that sounded good, man. That felt pretty good, but I felt like something was missing. He was like, oh, yeah, man, it felt like something that somebody was missing, right? He's like, yeah, something that somebody was missing. He's like, man, bring that beat back. And they drop the beat again, and then Flavor Flav walks out and starts dancing on stage like he did in the iconic video for the song, you know, I Ain't No Joke. You know, if you know the video for I Ain't No Joke from '87, like Flavor Flav is all up in it doing this dance in the middle of the park, and that's like a big part of that video. So for him to come out on stage 30 years to the day and, you know, do his dance like that as part of that whole thing, it just really set the tone for the evening, man. So I was just happy to be a part of it. Thanks to my lady Farrah Boulay, who surprised me with tickets. She made me think we were doing something completely different. And
you know, I knew about that.
Yeah, I know. I found out later you were in the know because I was telling you to come join us. You know, what I thought we were going to be doing. You're like, okay, yeah. And I didn't hear anything from you. I was like, what's going on? And then now I find out, man. But it was, you know, I wouldn't have had it any other way, man. I was completely surprised and very touched and very moved. So I'm very happy to be a part of it.
Shout out to Farrah. What a fantastic
no doubt.
plan. As soon as I heard about it, I was like, oh man, I think he's gonna like that a little bit.
Yeah. It made my day. And I got a great picture with Eric B afterwards too.
All right.
Yeah. Man.
All right. Hey, you never know what you're gonna do. See, C3 Arts Radio, we cover all the bases. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. We're just getting started here. C3 Arts Radio.
Estoy tan enamorado de la negra Tomasa, que cuando se va de casa, qué triste me pongo. Es que estoy tan enamorado de la negrita Tomasa, que cuando se va de casa, pero qué triste me pongo. Ay, ay, ay. Esa negra linda cámara que me dio bilongo. Oye, esa negra santa cámara que me dio bilongo. Lo más que me gusta es la comida que ella cocina. Lo más que me gusta es la café que ella me cuela. Pero que mira, lo más que me gusta es la comida que ella cocina. Es que lo más que me gusta es la café que ella me cuela. Ay,
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, right here, C3 Arts Radio, right here every Tuesday, 5 to 6 p.m., right here, WHCR 90.3 FM, of course, the voice of Harlem. And we are the broadcast arm of the City College Center for the Arts. Now, not only can you, of course, tune in at 90.3 FM every Tuesday, 5 to 6 p.m., but you can also generally check us. So we're kind of in new digs at the moment, so we might not be operating at full capacity right now, but we will very soon return to our normal operating conditions, where you'll be able to live stream us also at WHCR.org and also listen to us on TuneIn.com. WHCR-FM. And the party never stops because you can always catch us online. That's c3artsradio.com, at C3ArtsRadio on Twitter, and at C3ArtsRadio on Instagram. You can also check us out on Facebook, C3 Arts Radio. And we're just getting started here, ladies and gentlemen. We have our mighty co-host, Mr. Nasser Metcalf is here. And he's going to be pulling double duty. Not only is he official co-host here at C3 Arts Radio, joining the team, but he is also going to be the subject of our What's the Word storytelling segment a little later. But first, we're getting into the bulletin, which is where we give you our suggestions on what you should be checking out in the world of arts and culture. And today we are concentrating on New York City. Now, before I get into that, however, because we are the broadcast arm of City College Center for the Arts, I have to let you know what is happening here on the stages of Aaron Davis Hall and in the spaces elsewhere on the campus of City College, where we present the Cultural Arts Forum. So, now, very interesting. We have art installation, and it's quite a interesting kind of concept and story that's going on here. It's called Uptown Batallas, the Old School, Refugees, Gentrifiers and Hoods, plus Dominicans, right? And it's done by Carlos Jesus Martinez and Dominguez Pepe Coronado, curated by Soleo. And the show is one that we're really proud to have here at City College Center for the Arts. It's getting down to some of the themes and stories that we want to tell as a cultural arts entity, therefore telling, a myriad, kind of a widespread concept or offering, if you will, of stories from different parts of the world or different parts of the cultural mosaic that makes up New York City. And Carlos Jesus and Pepe offer a combination of prints, painting, and typography. And it's an ode not only to their neighborhood, per se, but to the growing culture of Dominican Republics and what Dominican Republic, from the Dominican Republic and what they have brought and offer New York City, and really all the communities that we have seen an influx of Dominicans in the United States. I think of D.C., I think of the Boston area, Miami, and so on and so forth. Very important and the contributions that they make. So we're very happy to have this exhibition here. And you can check it out. Please go to citycollegecenterforthearts.org for more information. Okay. Now, the song that we were just playing just a moment ago, of course, that was the classic Bilongo by Eddie Palmieri. And this was kind of when Eddie Palmieri was at the height of his kind of commercial success, we might say.
Right.
And people may think of that, and I'm saying this from the 70s, right? The early to mid 70s or so.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, and this is before he would go on to win Grammy Awards and kind of get this great notoriety. And it's kind of funny how we see in people's careers this kind of movement where they'll work hard and they'll have this big hit. And then after a while, once they repeated having these big hits, then suddenly they're getting this acclaim. And then once that acclaim seems to slow down, you think that, okay, well, where'd they go? Right. But they don't realize that they're still out there, still making music, still making, and even if they're not the worldwide smashes that maybe they did before,
they're still thrilling audiences all around the world.
Absolutely, and still highly productive. And Eddie Palmieri is no different. And so he is going to be showing, or performing rather, at the Blue Note, New York, right? And he's going to have a special guest of Roy Haynes. And if you know about Roy Haynes and his spectacular career in and of itself, this is another match made in heaven. And it's going to be at the Blue Note Tuesday, August 8th at 8 p.m.
Nice.
All right?
Very
Very
nice.
Yeah,
Man. They do some great shows at the Blue Note.
yeah, they keep doing it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
They
no
keep doing
doubt.
it. They keep doing it. So that's another story. Maybe one day we need to just talk about some of these kind of grand performing houses, and which we can add our own kind of base here at City College Center for the Arts, Aaron Davis Hall, to that list as well. But the Blue Note, just year after year, decade after decade, keeps doing it. And this is another fantastic example, Eddie Palmieri featuring Roy Haynes.
No doubt.
Now we move to the world of photography. I tell you, we cover it all here. That's right. We cover it all, right? And the name of the exhibition that I want to point your attention to is called Time, Light, and Ritual, photographs by John Simmons and Frank Stewart. Now, you may, Nasser, the Chicago Defender.
Right, of course.
And you know how at one point in time, the great photographer, and I hope I'm saying his last name right, Robert Singstack.
Singstack, yes.
Singstack.
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 Yeah. It's a bit of a tongue twister, but
Yeah.
I mean, but that name carries a lot of weight in Chicago. The
Absolutely.
Singstack family and my family have definitely been very close for generations. So,
Right.
yeah. In fact, I mean, just a little side note on the Chicago Defender thing. It was in the early part of the 20th century that a lot of, black families were still occupying the southern states and looking for a better life and better opportunity, post-slavery, just a generation or two outside of slavery. And the Chicago Defender ran a story that there was all this opportunities, jobs up north, and it caused this great migration of all these people from these southern states to migrate to Chicago and Illinois, and some people went out west to California, and that's why sometimes you see, excuse me, black people who come from these states today sound like they have like a southern drawl because of that great migration. But but my family actually, my grandfather and his family made their way to Chicago from Georgia in 1920.
And that's an interesting route, because a lot of times during the Great Migration, people just went straight up. So going from Georgia, a lot of people from Georgia ended up in D.C. or New York or Philadelphia, or even Baltimore early on. So it's kind of interesting that they went to Chicago. They went kind of west. Interesting. Well, a lot of it was people having already established contacts and things of that nature as well. That's fantastic. So the Chicago Defender, and we think about some of these black newspapers and the talent that at one point in time they housed.
Yes.
Yeah. And I don't want to throw any shade at the publications today, which are still going strong. But Robert Singstack.
Yeah.
He was known as a great photographer, as you know, and he had many disciples, which then kind of went out around the country.
Right.
And it was a training ground as well. Well, that's what the base of this exhibition is, right? Right. So we have two of Singstack's disciples, we might say, John Simmons and Frank Stewart, who have come together. They've been friends since the days, since they both came up under Singstack, and they've been friends ever since. And they have this collaborative exhibition that they're doing, which is at the Wilmer Jennings Gallery. And it's going to be up until July 29th. So I wanted to make sure that I got this out so people can at least catch the ending of this exhibition. And for many of you who know John Simmons, of course, he has gone on to become this great cinematographer, as well as still drawing great rave reviews for his photography. And then Frank Stewart, of course, is very well known to New York cultural goers. He is the official photographer for Jazz at Lincoln Center. He is quite known for his work with Romare Bearden as well. So it's an absolutely fantastic exhibition. So please make sure you check that out. That's the Wilmer Jennings Gallery as well. Okay. And last but not least, there's this group. Now, if you've watched some of if you're a late night comedy show watcher, then you come across them. But a lot of people may not know a lot about this group. And that's what we're here for at C3 Arts Radio. We make sure that you are aware of some of these cultural shakers and movers. And this group is called The Suffers. The Suffers. And they're going to be performing at the Brooklyn Bowl. Right, Friday, July 28th, this coming Friday, right? Sometimes when we do the bulletin, we offer these events that are kind of far off into the future and such, and we'll still continue to do that. But today we've been kind of concentrating on things that are can't miss,
right?
So we want to make sure you don't miss, right? So
right.
They're coming up quickly, and we want to make sure you get there to check them out. Now, the Suffers are from Houston, and they've been kind of working their way nationally from already kind of being a big name in Houston. And for all our listeners who may be checking in on us from Houston, please know that there's a lot of great music coming out of Houston, and I'm not trying to throw any shade that way either. There's so much talent just coming from every corner of this country. But the Suffers are something which are very, very, very interesting. And if you can get out to the Brooklyn Bowl, in Brooklyn, of course, and check them out this Friday coming on July 28th, you will be well rewarded. As a matter of fact, because we believe in them so much, we're going to give you a little taste of what you can expect when you go see them. See, we treat you so well here at C3 Arts Radio. We treat you so well. So just hold on for a second, and we'll bring the Suffers to you. C3 Arts Radio.
Let's get into it.
Yes, honey, oh, I do love you. But do you want a sandwich? I'll make one for you. You wanna meet your lover? I'll mix one for you. Or do you want some loving, baby? Oh yeah, I'll give that to you. 'Cause honey, oh, I do love you. Yeah. Yes, honey, oh, I do. Yeah. Yes, honey, oh, I do love you.
C3 Arts Radio, and we are back. That was The Suffers.
Yes, that sounded great.
Yeah, it's kind of into
I
that
didn't
song.
suffer listening to that. I enjoyed it. Yeah, indeed.
And there's more where that came from, ladies and gentlemen. So check out The Suffers. They're going to be at Brooklyn Bowl this coming Friday, just a few days away. I'm sure there's still tickets available. And go check them out, brooklynbowl.com. Of course, that is in Brooklyn. We're still keeping our focus here with the bulletin on New York City. And now we're going to really get close to home, right? So for the past few summers, or even more than the past few summers, a few equals two. Few equals two, right? Is
Yeah.
that right? Yeah. Okay. So more than few.
Two or more.
Summers. The Classical Theater Harlem has turned Marcus Garvey Park right here in Harlem into a theater. And they've done fantastic productions, and the summer of 2017 is no different. This summer, the production is The Three Musketeers. Now, it's been on for a few weeks now, but if you have not seen it, or if by chance you didn't know that this was going on, well, this is what we're here for. So on from Tuesday, starting tonight, 8 p.m. to Sunday, that's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there will be performances of The Three Musketeers for free.
Every night
Every night,
at 8 p.m.
8 p.m. from Tuesday to Sunday. Okay? Now, this is done by the Classical Theater of Harlem. So you can, hopefully, I say that, and that term can make you think of the quality that has been put into these productions, which are being staged, of course, for free. And a lot of the talent, which is being showcased in the amphitheater
Yep.
in Marcus Garvey Park.
Can I also just add that
Absolutely.
I've been to a few of these productions at Marcus Garvey Park in the last several years that they've done them. Every summer usually we go, and it's just a great experience.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you've ever been to a play in a theater, you know how magical that experience can be. But it just becomes like something even more organic and in a living and breathing space outdoors like this in this amphitheater,
Absolutely.
and the natural elements contribute. I mean, we saw Romeo and Juliet there a couple years ago, and it started to rain.
Right.
And so it to the point where they had to pause the production, and the cast came out to the lip of the stage and like kind of talked to people a little bit as we were covering ourselves, and they finally got everything like back together, and then they, everybody took their place and resumed their seats, and a lot of people had left and just abandoned like watching the whole show. So those of us who were left got treated to an even more intimate performance because everybody moved up close, and the audience had connected with us personally for a little while until the rain stopped, and then they went back on stage and resumed performed and completed the performance, and it was incredible. It was like, so you just never know what kind of experience you're going to have when you go to one of these parks and one of these plays in the park like that, because it's such an organic experience. So something, and it's free, so you don't miss out on that, man.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
show up.
And you can just kind of make the day out of it too. You can get to the park early,
Exactly.
kind of relax and such.
Exactly.
It's a fantastic thing. Marcus Garvey Park, the transformation of Marcus Garvey Park, and the ability to have such quality programming.
Absolutely.
It's another one of these matches, like, we're talking about Eddie Palmieri and Roy Haynes. These kind of matches are just right. The Classical Theater of Harlem and Marcus Garvey Park. It's just right.
No doubt. Shout out to my man Ty Jones, the artistic director of Classical Theater Harlem.
Absolutely.
Good friend of mine.
Yeah, Ty is definitely a friend of the show as well. Shout out to Ty. And make sure you go see it. So that's going to be from Tuesday till Sunday, okay, until July 30th. So now if you show up next Tuesday, you're going to have missed it, all right? So,
Right.
So between Tuesday and Sunday, 8 p.m., of course, it is free. And there's just no loss there. It's a fantastic experience. Also, coming up, we have New Orleans. Now, I told you we're going to be focusing in on New York City, but not necessarily New York artists, right? Just like the Sufferers, Houston. Okay, we have Trombone Shorty.
Yes, one of my favorites.
Trombone Shorty, right? Who it was kind of interesting. I was reading an article about Trombone Shorty, and since his last album came out 3 years ago, the interviewer asked him, "Well, where have you been? Why haven't you come out with a new album lately?" And he was like, "Man, I've been so busy, I didn't realize so much time had passed."
Right.
Because he's just been doing work with everyone and everywhere, and a musician of that level and quality, they work all the time. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Even if they're not necessarily working under their own moniker.
Right.
They are just so in demand, and this is very true of Trombone Shorty.
Well, he's like the current generation's like definition of that whole New Orleans sound, and that big band, that swing, that bounce, all that stuff. Like he incorporates like all those traditional sounds of New Orleans and New Orleans jazz and up tempo stuff. I mean, he just like he defines it almost for this generation.
Well, I would say he and Etienne Charles, they really have kind of carried the banner for this generation as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so he has this new album, Vintage Trouble. It's called Vintage Trouble. And so he's going to be in town to promote the new album. Right?
Nice.
And it's going to be at Terminal 5. And it's coming up on Saturday, August 14th.
Cool.
Right. 8 p.m.
Real cool.
So check it out. Terminal5nyc.com is where you can get more information. And see what Trombone Shorty's has been cooking up. He's got his band Orleans Avenue with him. So Vintage Trouble's probably the appropriate name, right?
Right.
Looking for a little trouble.
Right.
And for our last recommendation, C3 Arts suggests we're going back to the Brooklyn Bowl for another hip-hop legend, right? And this is an interesting one, Nasser. I want to get your idea about what you think about this one. So Manny Fresh is going to be appearing at the Brooklyn Bowl.
Right.
Now, I have to admit, if you had told me back in the heyday of Cash Money, if I thought Manny Fresh, if I considered Manny Fresh a legend, I probably would have said no.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But in the years since, he kind of left Cash Money,
right?
And a lot of work, and he was always kind of, even though he had the group with Birdman, that group with them, he was a little bit more of the silent genius there,
right?
And the one thing he did after he left Cash Money, he got even quieter and more silent, and really just let the music speak for himself.
Right.
And so he's put a very impressive catalog together since leaving Cash Money. So I kind of have rethought my thinking and looking at his career. What do you say?
I mean, I give him his credit for his contributions and his impact and his influence. I mean, definitely, again, we're talking about that New Orleans sound. as it now, but as it relates to hip hop, you know, and certainly like he and some of those, you know, Wayne and some of the other Cash Money guys, Juvenile, they were all the progenitors of like the New Orleans style of hip hop, you know, and we gotta, you know, also can't mention all that without even going back to like the whole No Limit thing with Master P and that whole movement, you know. So Mannie Fresh definitely has his a solid, you know, footing in his role and what he played in that. And if you listen to where hip hop has gone since then, even stuff from other regions, even stuff coming out of New York with the whole like trap music sound and all that kind of stuff, it really does kind of harken back in many ways to me musically to that original New Orleans kind of sound. I think that New Orleans style of hip hop was kind of like a forerunner of the whole trap music thing.
It's interesting on that. Well, we think that a lot of those rappers, they pretty much are kind of children of Lil Wayne to some degree. Not children. That seems like I'm throwing shade, but
I understand what you mean.
Yeah,
in context.
Yeah. They're, you know, they see kind of Lil Wayne as we said, Rakim. So many people follow in the vein of his style.
Right.
And so much of this generation follows in the vein of Lil Wayne. I could see it, and I harken back to Mannie Fresh. Producing Go DJ for Lil Wayne, where that was to me the first song where I thought Lil Wayne really kind of showed his chops as a MC, not just, you know, rapper and an MC, and that song was purely crafted by Mannie Fresh. So it's kind of interesting parallels that we see there as well. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Mannie Fresh is going to be, and then now I keep saying how silent he's been. Well, he's resurfacing as his own kind of entity, I think, to claim his crown, and he's going to be performing at the Brooklyn Bowl as well. That's going to be Thursday night. All right. I told you we're giving all these things. I think the Trombone Show is the only one that has got a little breathing time. The rest of these things, that if you're looking for a way to end
this week,
the rest of this week, these are some fantastic offerings for you. Okay, all right. So check it out. You can go online. We'll be shooting out the information online. You know, get you all squared away and get you to the point of purchase, as they say. All right. So check us out. C3ArtsRadio.com. C3 Arts Radio on Facebook, at C3 Arts Radio, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll be right back. We still have the What's the Word segment, which are with our resident fantastic storyteller, Mr. Nasser Metcalf. We'll be right back.
All right.
Biddy biddy bang bang, biddy bang bang, biddy bang bang, biddy man. Bang bang, biddy bang bang, biddy bang bang, biddy man. Biddy man, I'm a coin, get a man, get a man. Hey. Early Sunday morning, it was a pick and just smuggling. Hey. Inna the mud, me a pick and labor, and me a load them down in a tub. Hey. One by one, load up the van. It ram. Put it on a plane, go we gonna Spain. Money just a pour like rain. Me just a muggle up the lane in a rope gold chain. Hey, me and me girl named Jane. Bang gang, get it bang gang, get it men den. Better men a coin, better men den get a coin. Dang dang, did it dang, get it men den, get a men den, get a men den, get a men den, get a men. Down there in the ghetto I go, where suffering I once know. Mommy and daddy all are we so poor, we all had to sleep on the floor. Storm it come and it blow down me door, me have to nail up me window. Me shoes tear up, me toe dust a show, me no know where he really run go. Mommy does a ball, poor, me cry, she say, don't cry no more. Dang, diddy dang, get him in, den, ben a mo coins, then I'm in, get him coin. Dang, diddy dang, get him in, den, ben a coin, get him in, get a coin, get him in.
C3 Arts Radio, and we are back.
Indeed.
And we're going to give you what we promised, right? So, of course, we have the What's the Word segment. And if anyone's interested in joining us here at C3 Arts Radio and being part of the What's the Word segment and coming and telling you, sharing your story, please just email us, c3artsradio@gmail.com, c3artsradio@gmail.com, and let me know, and we'll get you up here on the air and let you tell your story. So we're going to sit back and let Mr. Nasser Metcalf, our co-host, and also our resident storyteller, take us out of here. Okay.
All right, cool, man. Thank you so much for that great introduction, and for having me here. And just in general, man. When you asked me to come up here and share stories, I had so many different thoughts about like what I could talk about. I've had a really interesting life, and I mean, most of the stories yeah, exactly. Most of the stories I tell come from my personal experience, and so I thought about something that, in the context of what we've been talking about. We started off talking about going to the Eric B. and Rakim concert for their 30th anniversary recently. It made me harken back to my first experience with live hip-hop. As I said in the beginning of the show, growing up in Chicago, hip-hop hadn't quite made its way from being a regional New York thing across the country to me yet in that way. It had, I'd heard some stuff on the radio, like I said, Rapper's Delight, The Message, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. A couple little joints had started to come, but Run DMC hadn't even come out yet at this point. And got a chance to see Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five live in concert when I was about 12 years old or something like that, and they were opening for Rick James. Now, to tell the story, I need to go back to my first Rick James concert, which was a couple of years earlier. I had just gone through kind of this whole cultural identity crisis that I had just gotten past, and was starting to fall back in love with like my own culture, my own identity, and black music and stuff like this. And so one of the things that was really hot at this time was Rick James had out 2 hit songs, Give It To Me Baby and then Super Freak. These were like major smash hits, and Rick was like definitely like, a preeminent funk soldier and stuff.
Well, he was kind of leading the charge to break into MTV at that time. I remember that.
Yeah,
they weren't playing black videos.
They weren't very much, but Rick that song James became so undeniable, between him and Michael at the time, and even stuff with Prince and stuff, So, but Rick toured with the for that album. The album's called Street Songs. And he toured with that in '81. Now, my stepfather, who's my stepfather today, he and my mom had first started dating around that time, and he and I hadn't really got a chance to spend too much time together one-on-one. So I really wanted to go to this Rick James concert really bad, and nobody would take me. He decided he would step up and take me. Now, this dude, is good man, professional. He's an orthodontist, he's about his betterment and education. He's not in the streets like that. Well, we went to this Rick James concert. I don't know if you recall, in Chicago, there was this venue called the Amphitheater. It was on the south side of Chicago, and it had been there for a number of decades at that point. We're talking about the early 80s, and it had been there since the south side had kind of a different complexion, but it was still there, and the area had become really gang infested. So the Gangsta Disciples were ravaging through this concert, man, mugging people in the aisles. I just saw them. The man who was selling the programs and stuff like that, they had orchestrated a thing where they made this long line of like maybe 10 dudes in front of them, 10 dudes behind them. Then they started swaying back and forth more and more violently. And then finally they did it to the point where they just knocked him down and just took all his memorabilia and T-shirts and money, everything he had. I'm like, man, this was crazy. So we weren't sure we were going to even make it out of there alive. And but thankfully we did. And my mom vowed to never let me go to a Rick James concert again. So now my dad, my parents split by this time. So now my dad, a couple of years later, Rick is coming back to town, and my dad wants to take me. Okay. But we're scared about what's going to happen at these Rick James concerts. Well, it was at a different venue. It was at the U of I Pavilion, which is a nicer venue, better security and whatnot. And he had a couple of opening acts. Al Hudson and One Way, and who had out that song at the time, Cutie Pie. Exactly.
Cutie Pie.
Exactly. And then and Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, who had The Message out at the time. So it was like, man, this is gonna be a good bill. But my mom really didn't want to let me go. So one of the things I was able to come up with to convince her to let me go was that my dad was actually friends with Mr. T, who was just starting to become famous. He had just done Rocky III. He hadn't quite done the A-Team yet, but my dad knew him from his days being a bouncer at the clubs in Chicago. So, so I said, you know, my dad was like getting like a bunch of his friends together, his guys, you know, like we're gonna be in there like full force, nobody's gonna mess with us, kind of thing. And I said, man, if Mr. T would come to this concert, I mean, you know, I'm 12 years old. You know, I'm not thinking about celebrity. I'm just thinking like nobody messes with Mr. T. So I asked my dad if Mr. T would come to the concert with us. So he said, I'll call him. And he called him, and he called me back, and sure enough, he let me know. Mr. T said he's going to go to the concert with us. I was like, what? I was like, I'm going to the Rick James concert with my dad and all his friends and Mr. T. I was like, man, you couldn't tell me nothing. So the day of the concert comes, and we get ready to go, and we swing by Mr. T's apartment on the Gold Coast to pick him up. And I remember getting out of the car. We're going to get there. We're going to go pick him up. And we go to his apartment building, and the doorman calls up to his apartment, and I can hear his voice come through the phone. I'll be right down. I was like, that's Mr. T, that's Mr. T. So eventually the elevator doors open, and Mr. T steps off, all his gold chains and everything, but he lets us know that he's actually going to the concert, but he decided to bring his family. So he got them all tickets and got a limo coming, and they were going to be backstage. So he didn't go with us. He went, but he didn't go with us. But this is where I saw Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5 perform for the first time, and I didn't understand. Like, we saw them setting up with turntables, and at first my dad was like, what are they doing, man? I paid good money for these tickets. They're not be playing records out there. They need to be performing with some instruments. But when we saw Flash's artistry on the turntables and what the MCs did, man, shout out to all my guys from the Furious 5, man, Raheem, Creole, Melly, Scorpio, Cowboy, R.I.P., and Flash, man. Y'all guys, man, y'all changed the game for me, man. And it's like I started falling in love with hip hop from that moment, you know. So that was a great experience, man.
Oh, man, that's a fantastic story, man.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you, man. Thank you.
C3 Arts Radio, but hey, man, we'll be back. We're going to get more on that. We got to get more of this. We'll be back. C3 Arts Radio, thanks for joining us.
Thank
today.
y'all.
We'll be back next Tuesday.